am I concerned when it comes to Cardano? Well, the reason why I'm even wanting to answer this question in the first place is because remember not too long ago, it was reported how Grayscale withdrew its Cardano, Hedera, and Polkadot Trust ETF filings with the SEC. So naturally with this, right, people are saying, wow, Cardano? Seriously, that happened to it? Is this done for? Is this cooked? Why is Grayscale, withdrawing their application or their filing or whatever? But to me, it's not concerning. And let me explain why I think that way in terms of my rationale, even though nothing I say is financial advice. It's just my perspective, and I am not telling anyone to do anything. So again, the key word there is Grayscale withdrew, right? It's not a rejection by the SEC. Now, people like to say, well, if Grayscale likes quote-unquote Cardano so much, why would they withdraw that? Now, keep in mind, it's not only just Cardano, but the reason why they withdrew it, in my opinion, is not because of a dislike. It's more so because of a change in criteria, arguably. Here's my rationale. When Grayscale filed for this initially, right, the criteria was actually slightly different, arguably, I would say. And with the change in criteria, it would only make sense that maybe they withdraw it and maybe reapply later and adjust it based on the new criteria. It would only make sense, in my opinion. Now, would they have withdrawn it had the criteria not changed when it comes to the filing? I don't necessarily think so. I think this was primarily due to the fact that there was a slight change in the criteria, which I think actually made them want to withdraw. Let me just give this as an example. Let's say a t-shirt company wanted to order 10,000 blue t-shirts. Now imagine if I'm, trying to produce 10,000 blue t-shirts and suddenly they're like, oh wait, hold up. We actually want it to be green. Now, if that's the case, I'm going to have to totally change what I did, right? Or what I'm producing. So I'm going to have to adjust the new production based on the new criteria. Now, that's more of an extreme example. Of course, it's a little bit different here, but it's just more of a exaggerated example to kind of showcase what, this is, right? In terms of just an analogy. You know what I mean? I think a better analogy would probably be, ordering 10,000 blue t-shirts and suddenly they say they want a collar. So then I'm going to have to add that or whatever. Yeah, I think that's a better analogy, but I think you get what I mean when it comes to that. So it's not necessarily a big concern. I don't think it highlights a fundamental weakness when it comes to Cardano, at least in terms of the perception of Grayscale. I mean, need I remind people, I even made a video on this not too long ago. Remember when Grayscale had that quarterly rebalance for the second quarter of this year? And in terms of the Grayscale smart contract fund or whatever, ADA, which is Cardano's native token, it made up almost 5% of that. So I'm not even talking about Grayscale ignoring this completely. I mean, if they really did dislike Cardano that much, do you think they would want to have ADA in one of their funds and it making up almost 5% of it? I don't think they would want that if they really truly dislike Cardano. So I think them withdrawing this isn't out of a dislike, it's more so out of just wanting to maybe adjust things moving forward given the new criteria. Now, will they reapply though? Will they refile basically? It's still up in the air, we really don't know. But one thing we do know though is that this was not a rejection by the SEC. It was more so Grayscale voluntarily withdrawing it. Now, again, there could be a bunch of different reasons as to why they did so, but my main kind of, I guess, hypothetical is that it's probably because of the change in criteria, which probably made them want to withdraw it, and who knows, maybe hypothetically reapply moving forward and adjusting their new filing based on the new criteria. That's just kind of it. I recently watched Spider-Man, so, my Spider-Man senses, or should I say my Spidey senses, were kind of tingling in that direction, if you get what I mean. When I take a look at in the case of Cardano, long story short, I'm just not concerned because what am I concerned about? I mean, nothing bad really happened to it, fundamentally speaking, in terms of a layer 1 blockchain. I just don't see what's wrong. I mean, the Van Rossum hard fork recently happened, and that brought amazing security, I guess, upgrades when it comes to Cardano. And then also on top of that, we're still looking forward to Leos, right? Maybe what that could bring when it comes to Cardano. Allegedly, it's going to bring fantastic scalability when it comes to this. So yeah, we'll wait and see if the mainnet of Leos could even happen. But the Van Rossum hard fork did lay down the groundwork for something like Leos. So I find that to be pretty impressive. So again, Grayscale withdrawing its Cardano, Hedera, and Polkadot Trust ETF filings with the SEC, it wasn't a big concern to me just because, again, it wasn't a rejection by the SEC. If it was, then okay, that's a little bit different, But if it isn't a rejection and if it's actually just Grayscale voluntarily doing it, I think there are probably reasons as to why they did that. And again, the main hypothetical reason why I already talked about before, and I just don't really find it that concerning, personally, in my opinion. I mean, granted though, Cardano does not, to my understanding, at least as of right now, have an approved US spot ETF. It just doesn't have one currently. So if Grayscale had been able to achieve that, right, that would actually mark a pretty monumental milestone when it comes to Cardano, which to me at least, it would have been pretty fantastic. But again, if Grayscale's actual intent is to refile later based on the new criteria, which we don't know as of right now if they would ever do, by the way, I just want to make that clear. But if their intent is to refile, and for whatever reason, if there is like an approval there, it would mark a pretty monumental milestone where we could very well see, right, a spot Cardano, or should I say ADA ETF in the US. That would be pretty impressive. But that's contingent on a lot of factors. So yeah, besides that point though, not much has happened to the price of ADA, still at around 20 cents, or should I say 19 cents basically. So yeah, I mean, still around 5 times away from $1. Not really much going on there. But again, the main point of contention as of right now is the concern over that recent news in regard to Grayscale, which, I just didn't really find that concerning, and I already explained my reasons why. But yeah, that's just my perspective. But I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward. So I want to say thank you so much for watching.